One of the things that was so unusual here is, as this former employee left his job a couple months after that FBI search, before he becomes a crucial witness to investigators, Donald Trump gets his cell phone number. Hadn't called him in quite some time, rarely called an employee like this, and calls him and asks him, why are you leaving? Why are you leaving working for me? Very possibly at that time knowing that this man could be a witness against him in this investigation.
CNN is now reporting that Trump and his allies repeatedly contacted a former Mar-A-Lago employee who just happened to be present for many of the suspicious goings-on while Donald Trump was mishandling classified documents at Mar-A-Lago. And he also happens to be an employee that special counsel Jack Smith is talking to as part of his investigation and probe into this matter. Now, it's possible that Trump and his allies, just wanted to maintain their friendly relationship with this former Mar-A-Lago employee. It's a possibility. But the timing of the communication and the messages being sent would suggest otherwise. So 3 months after the FBI had seized the classified records from Mar-A-Lago last August, the longtime employee of Donald Trump's decided to quit their job, quit his job. So 2 sources say that just within days, Donald Trump personally called this former employee on his cell phone to ask why he decided to leave. Why did you quit? At that point, the former employee said that he had gotten a different job and he decided to leave as a result of that. The employee told the former president that he had another business opportunity he wanted to pursue. The message later got back to the former employee that Trump thought he was a good man. So apparently that conversation pleased Trump to the point where he didn't really see this former employee as a threat in his prosecution in the mishandling of classified documents. So a little more information about this former employee who is unnamed for the moment. Now, he was allegedly a witness to several episodes special counsel Jack Smith has included in his federal criminal indictment of Donald Trump. He was also later subpoenaed by Jack Smith and his team. Now, he had moved several boxes, the former employee had moved several boxes for Trump and was also privy to conversations referenced in the indictment between Trump and his 2 co-defendants, Mar-A-Lago property manager Carlos de Oliveira and Trump's body man, Walt Nauta, putting the former employee in a unique group of Mar-A-Lago staffers who could be in a position to provide valuable information to investigators. This is why the story and the communications, the repeated communications and contacts that the former employee had with Donald Trump matters, because there is some question as to whether Trump was trying to witness tamper here, right? Trying to dissuade this former employee from cooperating in this investigation. Now here's CNN reporter Caitlin Polantz explaining what their communication to the former employee entailed.
Former employee at Mar-A-Lago, he was friends with Carlos de Oliveira, who later became charged in this case. And Carlos had said things to him about, hey, you should come to a golf tournament after he leaves working at the club. Trump would like to see you. I think Trump would really like to see you. He also talks to Carlos de Oliveira, and Carlos says something about perhaps you want to come back to your job. You could come back to your job at Mar-A-Lago if you wanted to. There's also some discussions between the 2 about the attorneys. Do they want to use attorneys that are within the Trump circles, as Carlos de Oliveira did? This former employee chose to use an attorney outside of the Trump circles. There's also an instance where he interacts with Walt Nauta, who later is charged, someone he has a less close relationship to, and Walt Nauta did tell him, you could come back to work at Mar-A-Lago if you wanted. That Nauta was also showing up at a gym with this man, as well as Carlos de Oliveira, which was unusual.
So that comment about the lawyers is particularly interesting. The ex-employee is using outside counsel, unaffiliated with Trump's team. That's very relevant here, which de Oliveira noted to him would be expensive. Like, hey, you might wanna use one of Trump's lawyers. If you go with your own counsel, independent of Trump's team, that could be costly. Meanwhile, public records show that Trump is paying for de Oliveira's lawyer, so that's also relevant here. He took on the lawyer after Nauta and others discussed his loyalty and whether he was good, according to the indictment. And there's more, one more graphic I want to read to you all, and then Cenk, please jump in. In another instance, John Rowley, who at the time was a top lawyer on Trump's defense team, left a voicemail for the former employee saying he knew he had received a grand jury subpoena to testify in the documents case. Rowley asked the employee to call him, but the employee never called back.
Okay, so there are three issues here. Number one, are they in the real world witness tampering? Trying to get that guy who has important information about how they wanted to tamper with the evidence in the boxes, etc., to play ball with their team, give him a lawyer so he doesn't have those expenses, give him his job back, offer some degree of money, and Trump calling him as extraordinary, them showing up at the gym out of the blue is extraordinary. Were they witness tampering? Of course they were. Every person who reads those facts knows that they were, right? Now, the second issue is, can you prove it in a court of law? Well, that one's much more difficult because they can say whether, like, there's a difference between did O.J. Simpson actually kill those two people, and can you prove it beyond a reasonable doubt in a courtroom where the lawyers come in and go, yeah, but what about this and what about that? But the gloves don't fit, and how about the shoes, etc. Right? So when the lawyers get into this one, they're gonna say, well, I mean, he could have been calling because he was such a star employee and he wanted him back. And the lawyer could have been calling him because he was really concerned about him and wanted to see if he wanted free legal help. So they could do all of that, and then being able to prove it is a 50-50 proposition. So I'm being honest with you guys. Everybody, usually says no, either this or that, which leads me to the third point that's involved here. Look, very roughly, the 40% of the country that's Democrats are going to look at that and go guilty, and they're not even going to do the analysis that I just did. They're just going to say, oh, he called a witness tampering. I hate him. It's over. 40% of the country that's MAGA or right wing or Republican, these are very rough numbers, are gonna look at that and go, even if Donald Trump came to him with an envelope stuffed with $100,000 or a suitcase with $100,000 and said, here, take this and don't testify against me, and they have it on videotape, they'd go, no, I don't believe it. So they're useless. You're never gonna convince them, right? No amount of evidence will ever be enough. But like I said, it's not like the Democrats are like combing through the evidence. They've already decided he's guilty on these things, right? So then the biggest question on this and everything else is the middle 20%. Are they paying attention enough to see this kind of, whether you prove it in a court of law or not, but common sense, court of public opinion, hey, is this guy trying to hide evidence or isn't he? Is he guilty or isn't he? Did he actually take these documents to do something terrible with them? Did he actually, in the other cases, come up with fake electors to do a coup plot, or didn't he? And I don't know the answer to that. I don't know how much that middle 20% are paying attention. Because if they were paying attention and they were open-minded, Donald Trump would be toast. In the cases overall, the evidence against him is overwhelming. So this is a tiny part of that, an important part of it if he's obviously trying to cover his tracks because he knows he did something wrong. But we don't know that, and I would love it if polling tried to find that 20% and ask them, do you care? Because it might not be 20, it might be 3% or 5% who care whether he did it or not. There's already polling that shows a giant chunk of the country says, I don't care if he's convicted on all counts. I don't care, I'm voting for him. So that's the question at hand, and that one we're not gonna know until election day.
Going back to the possibility that he's engaging in witness tampering here, it's not the first time that Trump has been accused of basically intimidating those who might make allegations against him. I remember when the hush money payment scandal was really heating up. Stormy Daniels, who was one of the women that he paid hush money payments to, came out and said that one of his allies had reached out to her to intimidate her. She said, quote, I was in a parking lot going to a fitness class with my infant daughter, taking, the seats facing backwards and the back seat diaper bag, getting all of the stuff out. And a guy walked up, walked up on me and said to me, leave Trump alone, forget the story. And then he leaned around and looked at my daughter and said, that's a beautiful little girl. It'd be a shame if something happened to her mom. So look, I remember that allegation, and when this recent story came out about the ex Mar-A-Lago employee, I couldn't help but think about the claims that Stormy Daniels had made at the time. So that history, I think, is relevant. If he is witness tampering, there should be efforts made to protect the potential witnesses in this case, because any act of intimidation obviously not only jeopardizes the case and the investigation. I would hate for people to feel afraid to cooperate with this investigation.
Look, we've covered this different stories about Trump now hundreds of times, where he acts like a mob boss and he's so ashamed if something should happen to your mom. Is a very standard Donald Trump, thug line that he either himself or his associates deliver. He does witness intimidation, witness tampering, obstruction of justice. He does it on a regular basis. He never cooperates with law enforcement. The FBI says give the documents back. He makes the Oliveira and Nauta hide them. He's a lifelong criminal. We've now discussed hundreds of, now, to be fair, on the crimes that he's violated, including hiring undocumented immigrants for his properties, violating codes, tax fraud, you name it, dozens of laws that he has broken throughout his career and never had any consequences, because the elites never have any consequences. Now he's crying his eyes out because he's the first. He's like, well, I'm an elite, I shouldn't be held to account for the law. That's for the average man. I can't believe I'm not above the law. But look, guys, just look at that one case of threatening Stormy Daniels and doing that with a kid, right? Oh, it's a shame what happened to your mom. If you told me that about a random Democrat, let's say there was an open primary and JB Pritzker is running, and I know some good things and bad things about him, and I found out that he had somebody do that, I'd say I'm done with him, okay? I'm not gonna vote for a thug who goes around threatening people and their kids, right? But MAGA doesn't view it that way. MAGA likes that he's a thug. And so they're immovable. They're an immovable object. The question is, are independents going to see all of this, and are they going to care? That's the question that's going to determine whether we have a democracy or not after 2024.
Hey, thanks for watching that video. We really appreciate it, guys. And we appreciate it if you become members, because that allows us to be independent, honest, progressive, all the things that you don't get from corporate media. And all of that is because of you guys. Hit the join button below and become one of us, become a Young Turk.